All right, good evening, and thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. We've got, of course, snow watch across many portions of the British Isles through the next 48 hours. Gone is the 16s, 17s, and 18s of yesterday. That is now a distant memory, and we are seeing a cold front sweeping southwards over the British Isles. Nothing particularly dramatic on that cold front. It's really just a separator from the warmer versus the polar air that we're now seeing digging southwards. But looking at the CFSV2, this is the 500 millibar height anomaly chart for the next 7 days. You can see here a positive over Greenland, negative over Scandinavia. Notice the north-south orientation of the ridge and trough axis here. So we're essentially got with region due west of the UK extending all the way up to Greenland and the Arctic. We're shutting off the Atlantic, and that is something we didn't see with blocking high pressure back during December. Remember, we had the blocking, position generally to the north, but we still had undercutting systems coming in from the west, which kept, milder air coming in underneath that. But so you can see that off the CFSV2. If we look at Europe, you can see a better version of that. We've got, of course, the blocking to the west. We've got the trough to the east. And you notice here that the trough is extending all the way down into Iberia here. So we're going to see polar continental air getting driven all the way in through the Low Countries, through Germany, France, Spain, and Portugal as well, where we could see some interesting snow here as well. And it's not just the UK, but it's going to be the near continent that sees the big difference as well. We've been talking about ridiculous warmth here as well, and it's going to be a real shock to the system for many millions of people. Is it unusual? It actually isn't that unusual, folks, really, this. I think the biggest story in all this is really going to be the shock to the system. Because it's been so mild, then we'll revert back to winter once again. But really, April's can be a very fickle time, and quite often when you get these very warm spells during the month of March, look out in April for colder times. And of course, I've already alluded to the reasons why we're at this place right now with regards to the colder air coming down. But what is interesting actually is the fact that it looks as if the area of high pressure to the west of the UK kind of sinks south enough that we start to get a flow off the Atlantic riding over the top of that ridge and into the UK. And that indicates, by the way, that even later Friday and into the weekend, we could start to see milder conditions coming back in again, especially across the northern half of the British Isles. Further south, still holding on to that colder air, and of course, over the near continent, you hold on to it as well. Looking at the 2 meter temperature anomaly chart for the next 7 days, this is how it's looking, and you can see here, look at the continent. Look at how below normal it is really from Russia all the way to Spain. You can see here the core of the cold over the UK, that is actually centered to the east of Bristol here. So it's quite interesting to see that there. And we've actually got average to slightly above average temperatures across the north. And the reason why is because a few days from now, we're going to start to see Atlantic air running over top of that ridge of high pressure here. So we'll keep an eye on that. And as I play through the loop, you can actually see where the warmer air moves into Scotland in particular. Notice that really from the central belt southwards, still holding on to colder than normal, which is quite interesting. The continent as well, fairly cold. We've got a little bit of warmer than normal, if you notice here, across the northern portion of Spain. But generally speaking, across France, across much of mainland Europe, notice a suspicious warmer than normal actually across the Alpine region, which is quite interesting to see here. But as I play through the loop, you can still see that the continent remains fairly cold overall, and that has been my suspicion that we see the continuation of colder times to come through the month of April. So I do think that we see moderation over the next couple of days, but do we see cold coming back? That's going to be the big question. That's going to be the big test as we go forward here. And we'll continue to look at that as we go forward. So looking at the ECMWF, this is the latest run. And of course, we see the frontal system moving southwards through the course of today. You can see here actually a kind of shadow here. This is generally milder air. The lighter colours representing the colder air. This right along here, oriented from kind of north to southeast. You can see that's the frontal system, and as we play through the loop, that system moves through. Notice on the back side of it, we've got an area of precipitation here. The area of low pressure, by the way, doesn't look as if it's going to be as prominent. So therefore, I would actually essentially rule out snow in Greater London. I did think that yesterday would have the development of low pressure. That, of course, would force dynamic cooling, drawing air from above down towards the surface, cooling the column, and therefore enhancing the cold air mass in place. With a lack of development of that low on the base of the trough as it sinks south, I don't think we're going to see enough cooling to take place in order to keep precipitation as a frozen. Now, the modelling is still seeing frozen precipitation, if you notice here, with a focus to the north of London here. So the Chilterns, the Downs, the Cotswolds, higher parts of these areas, folks, may see a covering. And you may see a snowflakes flying through the capital, but I'm not convinced that we're going to see lying snow. That being said, as well, we could see the precipitation coming through heaviest during the overnight period. That also would raise the possibility, if you will, an outside possibility of seeing snow falling in the London area. But I think it's the hills surrounding London that may, if anything, capture any snow. All the while we kind of draw our attention to the south and the southeastern half of the country, we're going to see some pretty strong winds, 30, 40, 50 mile an hour gusts coming out of the northeast. And of course, with the isotherm at 850 millibars, -8, -10 Celsius, certainly very cold indeed. It will feel distinctly, bitterly cold, in fact, in that wind, given the fact that we've seen what we've seen in recent days as well here. So it's going to be a very short blast of cold air from the Arctic here. Then as we push in towards the weekend, we continue to see, even by Thursday, if you notice here at 3 o'clock, this is probably the coldest day and coldest afternoon of this episode, really. I think we're going to be talking about temperatures 3 or 4 degrees in the north, maybe about 5 to about 8, maybe 10 Celsius further south here. Notice the area of precipitation, rain, sleet and snow, exiting Kent, moving across the channel into the near continent. Like I say, we could see some interesting snowfall here. And then, of course, we're left with a rash of showers piling in on that cold northeasterly wind. Notice the area of high pressure pretty close to the northwest. That is going to kind of topple its way in towards Friday. And, of course, with lighter winds, any snow on the ground as well, especially over high ground, we could see some very, very cold nights indeed. -6, -8 Celsius, very possible in some of the highland glens, especially if you get snow cover. Then as we go towards Friday and Saturday, that area of high pressure, like I say, sinks south. We start to see our air coming around the top of that high. So we've got chilly air, but less cold air compared to what we had. So we're pulling our air in more from the west-northwest as opposed to the north-northeast. So a very different direction, a very different source region in terms of the temperature here. So, it's interesting actually. We've got that area of low pressure coming down from the north. That may enhance some, rain, sleet, and snow showers across northern areas of the country during latter Friday into Saturday as well. I think there will still be surprises with all this, by the way. But it's nothing exceptional. It's nothing exceptional for this time of the year, and that's one thing I don't want to do is hype things up here. I would rather be realistic. I don't want to just try and enhance subscriptions or clicks or likes or whatever. I'm not doing it for that reason, folks. I'm doing it to show you what the weather's doing, and I would rather be honest with you with regards to what's taking place here overall. So finally, looking at the snow chart here of the ECMWF, Yeah, well, that is definitely not going to happen. I can rest assure you that. It looks as if the GFS actually is a more realistic model. For some reason, the ECMWF almost points to, just anything that falls from the sky is going to lie and it's not going to melt. It's just simply not realistic. Let's have a quick look at the GFS chart for the snowfall, and that gives you a better overall idea, I think, as we go forward here. So as we play through the loop here, this is for today, tomorrow. Sorry, 1800 hours tomorrow. You can see here that it's picking up in snow over parts of the Grampians, over the southern uplands, down the spine of the Pennines, which is quite interesting here, and then it's picking up in snow around London and around the North Downs here, just in the southern flank of London here. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes. We'll watch this as we go forward over the next couple of days and see what takes place here. But thanks for watching. I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate all your comments. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back hopefully again tomorrow with more. Bye for now.